Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton have officially given up on Mercedes. They were horrified by their performance at the Brazilian Grand Prix, calling it inexcusable. The team faced a challenging race at Interlagos, with their W14 cars slipping back through the field. Despite a promising start, Mercedes could only secure an 8th place finish, courtesy of Lewis Hamilton. Unfortunately, George Russell's race ended prematurely as his power unit approached the brink of failure. Mercedes made the decision to bring him into the pits for retirement rather than risking further damage by trying to nurse the car to the finish. Russell had been facing pressure from Alpine's Esteban Ocon, mainly because he had to engage in substantial lift and coast tactics to manage his car's condition. As he spoke with Sky F1 after the race, Toto Wolff couldn't conceal his disappointment, having witnessed his cars make no impact on the Brazilian Grand Prix. The Mercedes team boss said, "Inexcusable performance. There's even no words for that. That car finished second last week and the week before, and whatever we did to it was horrible. Lewis survived out there, but George, I can only feel for the two drivers with such a miserable thing. So it shows how difficult the car is. It's on a knife's edge. We've got to develop that better for next year, because it can't be that, within 7 days, you're finishing on the podium as one of the 2 quickest cars, and then you're nowhere." When asked whether the sprint format's impact had influenced Mercedes' setup issues, Wolff expressed that he doesn't believe it tells the whole story. "We're clearly not world champions on sprint race weekends, but it still doesn't explain what went wrong. I mean, the car almost drove like it was 3 wheels and not on 4. Toto Wolff acknowledged that the W14 appears to be heading towards being Mercedes' first winless car since the W02 in 2011, and he emphasized that the car's performance doesn't justify a victory at this stage. He added, "This car doesn't deserve a win. I think we need to push for the last 2 races and recover. That's the most important thing, and see what we can do in Las Vegas with a totally different track, and Abu Dhabi. But the performance today was... I'm just lacking words. I think straight line speed was one issue. That was probably not the main factor. The main factor was we couldn't go around the corners with a bigger wing with the pace we needed, and we were killing the tires, just eating them up within a few laps." Mercedes arrived in Brazil with high hopes, given that Hamilton had secured 2nd place finishes in the preceding 2 races in the US and Mexico. But his disqualification in Austin due to excessive floor wear was a setback. These performances followed the introduction of a new floor by Mercedes, which they had believed had represented a significant performance improvement. Toto Wolff described Mercedes' performance at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix as their worst weekend in 13 years. He found their lack of pace both baffling and unacceptable. "We will have a fundamentally different car next year, and this confirms that is the right thing to do. We are a proper structure, a solid team, and that didn't look like a solid team today." Interestingly, within 3 consecutive races, you are finishing a strong 2nd and 2 and challenging Max, and then a week later, you are nowhere, and I believe this is just not on. This car, the development has been more plasters we put on something not right, and it shows that it is so unpredictable that it can swing either side. George Russell openly acknowledged that he was taken aback by the speed displayed by the Red Bull and McLaren of Lando Norris in comparison to Mercedes after his impressive 4th place finish in the Sao Paulo sprint. Starting from P4 in the 100km dash, Russell made a fantastic start by overtaking Sergio Perez early on. He then advanced to 2nd place in the next lap by executing a skillful move inside Lando Norris at turn 10. But Russell's initial surge was short-lived, as he gradually lost positions. Lando Norris managed to overtake him on lap 5, and Sergio Perez followed suit on lap 8. From there, Russell was left to run a solitary race until the checkered flag. During the post-sprint interview, Russell was questioned about whether overheating tires were responsible for his decline in pace. He explained, "Yeah, pretty much. Hamilton and I were dropping back at a similar rate. I was quite happy with my management, but the pace of Red Bull and Lando just really caught us by the surprise. It's challenging to understand these tires. It was a strange one." When asked if they could mount a challenge against Red Bull and McLaren in the upcoming race, Russell wasn't optimistic at all, saying, "Well, right now, I don't think the challenge is on with those guys, which is a real shame. I hope things will come towards us. I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. We need to work to understand how we got it wrong today. It's very unforeseen. Little did he know how right he would be about Sunday's race. Lewis Hamilton is eager to bid farewell to the Mercedes W14, especially after the team's embarrassing performance in Brazil. His prediction of a challenging Sunday afternoon for Mercedes, stemming from tire management problems during the sprint, unfortunately turned out to be accurate as well. During the Brazilian Grand Prix, McLaren, Ferrari, and Aston Martin outperformed Mercedes, and even Alpine's Pierre Gasly managed to overtake Hamilton and create some distance. The W14 showed a concerning lack of straight-line speed, and Hamilton's teammate, George Russell, had to retire due to a power unit issue. In the end, Hamilton had to settle for 8th place, and he's relieved that only 2 more rounds remain before they can shift their full focus to F1 2024. When Sky F1 pointed out that there are just 2 races left with the W14, and then it's all over, Hamilton exclaimed, "Thank God." Hamilton mentioned that the W14 didn't feel as bad as it did during the sprint, but the combination of a lack of speed on the straights and some challenges with cornering made for a less competitive afternoon at Interlagos. He said, "Well, it didn't feel as disastrous as yesterday. Yesterday I finished. I literally had no tires left. They were worn to 0. So I feel like I drove a better race today in terms of managing the tires to the best of my ability. But the car, it's like moments it works, and then moments it doesn't, and it's so inconsistent throughout the lap, so we have to figure out what that is. And then also, we're really slow on the straights, and then really slow through the corners, or at least sliding the car through the corners. One to forget, but hopefully there's lots of learnings from today." After the sprint, Hamilton suggested that Mercedes probably hadn't quite nailed the setup on the W14, given the limited 1-hour practice available during the final F1 2023 sprint weekend. However, when asked whether the setup was the root cause of their struggles at the Brazilian GP, or if the car simply didn't respond as he'd prefer, Hamilton responded, "I think it's difficult to say. I mean, one thing is the car is really unpredictable in the sense of go one weekend, it feels good, one session feels good, and then not. I'm sure we'll go and look at things and find out we should have done things differently. But with the one session, it's difficult. But I'm still proud of the team that they still came here and did their work. They hold their head up high, and that's what we have to continue to do. We just keep pushing forward. 2 more races with this thing and then, hopefully, no more driving it." As mentioned earlier, George Russell's race was cut short due to an imminent power unit failure risk. Similar to the sprint race, Mercedes experienced a decline in performance as the main race progressed. Their competitive struggle was limited to a battle with Alpine, while Aston Martin and the lone remaining Ferrari of Carlos Sainz pulled away into the distance. George Russell had been harboring frustration due to the absence of Mercedes team orders for Hamilton to give up his position, and his afternoon took a further downturn when he was instructed to retire the car. Mercedes later confirmed that escalating oil temperatures in the power unit compelled them to make this decision, as there was a looming risk of a power unit failure if Russell had continued. What do you think? Is the W14 Mercedes' biggest failure to date, or is Max Verstappen just that good? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell for the hottest F1 news.